This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, most of you are my old students only, so let me directly get into the subject. Yeah, this SAP ui5, so according to our syllabus, it contains two things. One is front-end development, another is back-end development. Okay, front-end and back-end development. So coming to this front-end development, this would be for I can say 1.5 to 2 months, and then coming to this back-end development, this should be for around 1 month. So overall duration would be around 2.5 to 3 months. Total duration is 2.5 to 3 months. Okay, and sessions would be from Monday to Friday. Monday to Friday. And whatever we discuss in the live sessions, we'll be sending the daily emails, which includes detailed notes. Okay, detailed notes and the programs, whatever we discuss in the live session, and even the recordings also. Okay, so recordings we will be sharing thrice a week. Okay, sharing it thrice a week. Okay, this will be for preview access, and this would be available for 4 months. Okay, so this recordings is an additional service which we are providing from our end. We'll be sharing those live recordings thrice a week. I'll try to share on a daily basis, but again, sometimes it may not be possible to convert the recordings. That's the reason I'm saying thrice a week, and that will be for preview access. And these recordings will be available for 4 months, starting from day one. Overall, it will be for 4 months. Course will be completed in 3 months. After 3 months, we will be extending it for another 1 month. So this is the overall plan for this SAP UI5. So today we'll understand what exactly the SAP UI5 and what we are going to discuss in this front end and back end. Okay, right. So if you take this SAP UI5, it is a UI technology. It is a UI technology used for developing what web applications. So far, if you see our SAP transactions, we will be using what GUI. Okay, to connect to the SAP server, we'll be what connecting to the server to what SAP GUI. Okay, so all are GUI based applications. So if you want to what run your application in any of the device like a desktop, laptop, tablet, mobile devices, we'll be going for this particular ui5 application. So I can say SAP ui5 is a technology. It is basically a UI technology used for developing what web applications. Okay, web application means which gets executed in the browser. Okay, and most of the people will have a confusion between SAP ui5 and Fiori. Okay, both are almost same. By the end of the session, you will get a clear picture on what exactly the SAP ui5 and Fiori and how they are related, right? So as part of this SAP ui5, we'll be having the front end development and back end development. So first we will understand what exactly this front end and back end, then we'll get into the other details, right? So basically SAP ui5 is used for what developing what web applications. Web application means which gets executed in what web browsers. So it is something like this. Try to understand. See here, assume that this is your ui5 front end application. Okay, this is your ui5 front end application. Okay, so what exactly this ui5 application contains is A ui5 application is a collection of what views. Okay, so when I say views here, most of us are from ABAP background only. So as part of this ABAP programming, we'll be developing the transactions. Okay, so what exactly the transaction? A transaction is a collection of what screens, okay, which we can use for performing a business operation. Similarly, so how do we develop the transactions in case of our say ABAP environment? We use what screen painter, dialog programming, SC51, and we'll be developing the designing the transaction. So transaction is a collection of what screens. Similarly, a ui5 application is a collection of what views. Okay, so in our normal SAP J, we call them as screens. Here in web application, we call them as what views. So assume that this is view 1, okay, this is view 2, and this is view 3. Okay, so like this, a UI5 application may contain what? N number of what? Views. So as part of this multiple views, we have to make one of the view as what? Initial view. Just like again, if you take our module pool programming, a transaction might contain what? N number of screens. How do we execute a transaction? Through the T code, transaction code. So when you're creating the T code for a module pool program, okay, that particular module program can contain what n number of screens. We need to tell which is the initial screen. As part of creating the T code only, we'll be providing the module pool program name and we'll be providing the startup screen, initial screen. Similarly, a UI5 application may contain n number of what views. So what exactly is a view? A view is like a screen, okay, which is responsible for showing the content to the user, okay, and where this view gets executed, displayed in the browsers. So in the browser, if you want to show any information to the user, that information will show through what views. So out of these three views, we have to make one of the view as what initial view. Now, how do we execute this ui5 application? Through what? Browser. Okay, so if you take this browser, okay, it can be any browser, Google Chrome, Mozilla, Internet Explorer, Firefox, whatever it is. So this is a browser. As part of this ui5 application, you'll have one URL. So by accessing that URL, we'll send the request to this particular ui5 application. Okay, so try to understand. So through the browser, we are going to send the request to the ui5 application. So whenever we send the request here, it uses a protocol called as what? HTTP protocol. HTTP protocol. Okay. So using this HTTP protocol, a request is sent to what? ui5 application. So whenever this ui5 application is executed, this initial view gets loaded. From the initial view only, we will be navigating from what? One view to another view. Just like if you take our module pool scenario, we'll navigate between the screens by using what? Call screen, set screen statement. Here also, we need to navigate between one view to another view. As part of that navigation, we'll be exchanging the data between the views. So like this, we'll be navigating from one view to another view. So how do we develop this particular ui5 front-end application? We'll develop it with the combination of HTML5, try to understand, CSS, cascading style sheet, plus JavaScript, okay, plus I can say some part of jQuery, plus ui5 framework libraries. Okay, so by using all these things, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and ui5 framework libraries, will be developing the front end application. Okay, so who is going to develop this front end application? Who is involved in developing this front end application? This front end applications can be developed by what? ABAP consultant, or you can be what? Non-ABAP consultant. So it's not mandatory that only ABAP consultant has to develop this front-end application. It can be developed by what? A non-ABAP consultant also. Okay, done. So as part of this views, we'll be exchanging the data now. So from where we'll get the data, try to understand this. So assume that here, this is your backend development. Yeah, this is your backend development. So as part of this backend development, assume that here we are having, since you are from SAP background, assume that we are having different SAP systems here. It can be ANA system, it can be ECC, it can be SRM, it can be whatever it is, CRM. So assume that this is your ANA system, this is your ECC, okay, this is SRM. Assume that this is something what CRM. So as part of this systems, we'll be maintaining some data now. So what is our agenda now? What are the data maintained in my SAP systems? It can be any SAP flavor. Okay, so these are my SAP systems. So this, as part of the system, will be maintaining the data. So we need to consume this particular data in my ui5 application. So what we'll be doing here, we'll be developing something called as what OData service. Okay, try to understand. So assume that this is your OData service. Okay, OData service. So what this OData service is responsible is, it is going to interact with this particular SAP systems. Okay, it is two-way communication. It can read the data, it can insert the data, it can update the data, it can delete the data. Like this, it will be interacting with this particular systems. Okay, so this process we call it as what, backend development. So what exactly we'll do in this backend development, we will be having different SAP systems. So as a ui5 backend developer, we are responsible for developing what, OData service. Okay, this OData service is responsible for performing the CRUD operation. So what exactly we do with any database, will be what, creating the records, reading the records, or updating the records, or what, delete the records. So we'll be performing all kinds of what, CRUD application operations as part of this particular OData service. And this OData service will be consumed as part of what, needs to be consumed as part of this particular ui5 application. So this is your ui5 application which will consume this particular OData service, and internally it uses a protocol called as what, OData protocol. Okay, so this part we call it as what, backend development. This is your backend development. So who will develop this particular OData service? It is purely what, ABAP consultant. Okay, so what I mean to say is, as an ABAP consultant, we might be involved in both front end as well as back end development, or sometimes our scope is limited only to what, this particular back end development. But if you come to this front end application development, it can be done by either a ABAP consultant, or it can be from non-ABAP background. Means a Java developer can develop, a PHP developer, a .NET developer. It can be any kind of development, what technology, they can develop this particular front-end applications. But if you want to increase your scope in UI5 projects, as an ABAP consultant, okay, we should be aware of both back-end development as well as what, this particular front-end development. So to get into this back-end development, compulsory we require the knowledge of what, ABAP. Okay, we should know internal tables, function models, BAPIs, FCs, object-oriented concepts, classes, interfaces, methods. Okay, inheritance, polymorphism, all these object-oriented concepts mandatory to get into this particular back-end development. But if you are from what, Java development environment, or from .NET, whatever it is, you need not know anything about SAP. Still, we can develop what, this particular front-end application. So as part of our course, initially for the first 1.5 to 2 months, we'll be seeing this front-end development activities. Okay. Then after that, another 1 month, we'll be discussing what, this particular back-end development. Okay. So as far, how do we develop this front-end applications? with the combination of this HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, ui5 framework libraries, all those things. So it's not compulsory that we should know this complete HTML, CSS. Just if you have the basic idea about that, okay. So as part of our course, initially we'll be starting with HTML. Our agenda is not to learn HTML, CSS. I'll be spending only some 2 to 3 days, okay, for this HTML and CSS. Our focus should be from what? JavaScript, okay. I repeat once again, we are not going to learn complete HTML and CSS, not at all required. Just we should know what is HTML, what is CSS, how do we develop that web pages using this HTML and CSS, a basic information. But more focus would be from what? JavaScript, and jQuery is also a JavaScript, but it's a predefined JavaScript library, and then we'll be focusing on what? UI5 framework libraries. Okay, this is what we are going to discuss as part of the course. Okay, so if you have any questions on this aspect, please ask. You can unmute the speakers and speak, or else you can use the chat box. Any kind.
What is JS? I am hearing like something JSON.
Yeah, I'll come to that. JavaScript object notation.
Okay.
JavaScript object notation means it is one of the, just like if you take our SAP, we have IDOC now. IDOC is what? It is used for exchanging the IDOC is SAP's proprietary format. Only SAP systems can understand what? This particular IDOC format. Similarly, as part of this UI5 application, we'll be dealing with different kinds of data models. Okay, JSON format, okay, XML format, OData format. JSON is one of the data format. JavaScript object notation.
Okay.
Yeah, any other questions on this part?
Is there a possibility? Are we going to learn in this particular session UI5 front-end application only through this, or other environment like Microsoft integration, Microsoft technologies, UI5 design and integration with OData? Any example in the complete
Yeah, yeah,
session?
yes.
Okay.
Means, see, as I told you
Like it
initially,
is.
for
Yeah.
the first for the first 1.5 to 2 months, we'll be focusing only on the front end development. Okay, front end
Okay.
development means how to develop the views, how to navigate within the views. Again, we have different types of views. Okay, as I told you initially, different types of data format, JSON format, XML format, data binding. Okay, how to work with different types of controls. Okay, we'll be seeing those things. Then after that, as part of this backend development, we'll be seeing how to develop the OData service. So once we know how to develop the OData service, okay, we should consume this service in this particular front-end application. So what I can say is these two together, one second. Sorry, yeah, these two together, we call it as what? A Fury application. This is nothing but called as what? A Fury application. Okay, so what exactly is the difference between UI5 and what? Fury means UI5 is a technology, whereas a Fury is what? It's a design principle. Just like if you take our normal SAP, you can mute your speakers, Shiva. I think we are getting disturbance. Yeah, right. So what is the difference between this UI5 and Fury means? Theory is kind of a methodology, whereas UI5 is a technology. To develop this theory applications, okay, we go for what? UI5. It is something like this. See here, one second. Yeah, just see this. So all of you are from ABAP background. Suppose assume that you want to develop an ALV report. Okay, try to understand. You want to develop ALV report using what classes. Okay, so what is the process we'll follow for that? So this is your ALV report using classes. I want to develop this particular report. So as part of this ABAP program, okay, we have to follow certain steps now. What are the steps we'll follow? So this is a ABAP program. So as part of this, first, if you want to develop the ALV report using classes, we require what? A module pull screen. So you'll create what? A module pull screen. Then on top of that module pull screen, what you'll do? You'll place some custom control. Then what you'll do as part of the TBO event, we will link the custom control. We will link the custom control with what? Custom container. Okay, and then what we'll do? We will link ALV grid. We will link the ALV grid with what? Custom container. Then what you will do? You will retrieve the data. Then after that, we'll be generating what? Field catalog. Okay, we'll generate the field catalog. And then what you will do? We'll design the layout, or we'll set the layout. And then what you will do? We'll display the data. Display data on what? ALV grid. So we are following certain guidelines here. So these guidelines we follow as part of your ABAP program. Similarly, so this is your ABAP program guidelines. Okay, similarly, I want to develop a Fiori application. So what is this Fiori here? A Fiori is a new SAP user, is a new user experience. A Fiori is nothing but a new user experience where we can run our SAP applications. So this is your Fiori application. How do we develop this Fiori application? We'll be using what? ui5 technology. We'll be using this ui5 framework. Framework contains what? Libraries. A library is a collection of what? Different classes, interfaces, attributes, methods, all those things. So by using this ui5 framework, we'll be developing what? This particular Fiori application. So what we here will design the what? Views. Try to understand. We'll design the views. Then we'll be integrating what? Views. Means we will link the views. Then what we'll do? We need to write the business logic related to the views now. So we'll write something what? Implement what? Business logic inside what? Controllers. We have something called as controllers. Just leave them. We'll discuss it going forward. Then what we'll do? We will retrieve the data from our backend systems. After retrieving, what we will do? We'll do the data binding. Okay, so what I can say is you can compare this Fiori application like an ALV report. Okay, so Fiori is not a technology here. Fiori is a new user experience. Okay, if you take a normal ABAP reports also, we have classical reports and what? ALV reports. So why do we go for ALV reports? The look and feel would be what? Better. It has got many features compared with our classical reports. Similarly, this Fiori is also a new user experience for performing your SAP transaction. So you can compare this Fiori similar to what? This particular ALV report. ALV report is a finished product now. So Fiori is also what? It's a finished product. To develop this particular Fiori application, we use what? ui5 technology, ui5 framework. You can compare this ui5 framework similar to what? Your ABAP program. Okay, as part of that ABAP program, we'll be following some guidelines to develop the ALV report. Similarly, to develop the Fiori applications, we'll be using what? ui5 technology. So that is the difference between ui5 and Fiori. So learning ui5 or learning Fiori is what? Same. Understood? So don't get confused between Fiori and ui5. Fiori is a finished product. To develop that particular finished product, we use what? ui5 technology. So as part of that ui5 development, we require what? Front-end application as well as what? The back-end development, where we develop the OData services. Yes, Abhishek, or I don't know, Abhi. Yes, what are the application we developed in ui5? It is compatible with what? compatible with any of the smartphones. It can be Android, iOS, whatever it is. Okay, we need not worry about that. It is compatible.
And we are doing development in Web IDE, right, for cloud applications. So
Okay.
the complete structure of development in Web IDE, ui5 design, and the normal ui5 design will be same, right?
Yeah. Here, as part of our course, we'll be seeing two development environments. One is Eclipse, another is Web IDE. So why both means, as per my knowledge and experience, some companies are also using Eclipse tool for developing this particular UI5 application. So it's always better that we have hands-on experience both on Eclipse and Web IDE. Okay, so we'll be seeing complete development process both in Eclipse as well as what Web IDE. So whether it is on premise or cloud, the process will be almost same. Shiva, is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So if you take this UI5 application, how do we develop this UI5 front-end application with the combination of what? HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, all those things. So here, if you take this UI5 front-end components, one second. So So what is the purpose of this HTML? See here, our agenda is not to learn HTML. If you want to learn HTML, we can spend 1 month time also. So our agenda is not to learn HTML and CSS. Just we will understand what is a HTML document and how CSS is implemented in HTML. So I'll be spending only 2 to 3 days for both HTML and CSS together. More focus would be on what? JavaScript. Okay, because JavaScript is what? Mandatory to get into this particular UI5 framework. And most of the people will have a feeling that to get into this UI5, we require Java. Java is nowhere related to this UI5. Even if you have zero knowledge in Java, we can get into this what UI5. JavaScript is different, Java is different. So nowhere related to Java. Without any Java or .NET language, okay, knowledge, we can develop this particular UI5 application provided if you are good in what JavaScript. So if you take this HTML will be using what for designing what static web pages, static web pages. So for developing these HTML documents, what is the software I require? I require Notepad, or I can use what? Notepad plus plus. Then if you take CSS, cascading style sheet, it is used for what? Applying styles to what? Web pages. Again, for this also, we'll be using same thing. That is Notepad or what? Notepad plus plus. So we don't require any separate softwares for these things. Then coming to this, okay. Before JavaScript, we'll be discussing something called as DOM, document object model. This is also important. So by using this DOM, we can control the rendering of what? HTML pages. Means how the HTML pages are getting loaded into the browser. We are going to understand using this particular DOM structure, document object model. Again, this DOM requires same thing, that is Notepad or what? Notepad plus plus. Okay, then we'll be discussing what, so more focus will be from DOM onwards. Okay, so JavaScript, what is the purpose of JavaScript? To perform what? Client side what? Validations. To perform client side validations and to provide what? Dynamism to what? Web pages. To provide dynamism to the web pages, we will be using what? JavaScript. Again, the JavaScript also we require what? Either Notepad or what? Notepad plus plus. Then what is the next one here? jQuery. jQuery is also JavaScript only, but it is a predefined JavaScript library. Okay, so jQuery, it is what? Predefined JavaScript library. Means instead of writing lengthy code, by using some minimum code, we can achieve the functionalities. So this is minimum code. Again, this jQuery also will be developing, will be using either in Notepad or what? Notepad plus plus. Then we will be using what? UI5 framework. Okay. So to develop this, to use this particular UI5 libraries, UI5 framework means it's a collection of what libraries. So for this, we require what? Eclipse and what? Web ID or Web ID. Understood? So as part of our course, we'll be discussing both Eclipse as well as Web ID because some customers may go for Eclipse, some customers may go for Web ID. So it's always better we have the knowledge on what? Both the things, Eclipse and Web ID. Your resume also should highlight both the things, Eclipse and what? Web ID. Then after this, we'll be discussing what? This backend development. Okay. So for developing this OData service, we require what? This particular what? EHP7, EHP7, that is we require SAP system. So what I mean to say is when you're developing this front-end applications, we don't require any SAP systems. Okay, we require SAP system only when you are developing what? OData service. And after completing this backend, we'll be seeing the integration of what? The front end application, what? Backend application, backend OData service. Integration means I should be able to perform what? The CRUD operation. The main agenda of any application you take, it is used for what? Interacting with the database. What kind of operations will perform in database? Only this particular CRUD operation. So we'll be seeing that particular integration. Okay, so these are the purpose of each and every technology and the softwares we require for what? Developing this particular different components. Okay, and once we're done with this UFF framework, we'll be seeing what? Fiori configuration. Fiori configuration means where we'll combine all the applications together as part of what? A launchpad configuration. There is something called as launchpad configuration. So we'll be discussing this also. So this entire thing is what? Front end part. After completing front end, we'll be going for what? Back end. So as part of our course, we'll be seeing how to install Eclipse. Means I'll be sharing you the recording. That recording will show you the complete process for what? How to install Eclipse and how to set up this particular web ID. Web ID is just creating an account in the cloud. It's a very simple process. So we can do it on our own. Okay. Otherwise, you can go for the rental system also. If you go for that rental system, that system will have what? This Eclipse web ID as well as what? Backend development. So just to give an idea on that, one second. Yeah. So this is what? One of the rental system which you can take it from outside vendor. Okay, I'll give you the vendor details. You can contact them directly. So here, if you go for this rental system, you'll have the Eclipse installed already. Okay, and you'll have the web ID also. Okay, so I can open the web ID also. It is on premise. You can go for cloud account also. One second. Yeah. So it will open this web ID. So as part of this web ID, we'll be developing the UF application. So we'll understand the complete structure. What exactly these things? What are the different folders available? What is the purpose of each and every subfolder? We'll be understanding this in detail, both in Eclipse as well as in what? Web ID. So similarly, we have what? Eclipse also installed here. So we'll be discussing what both of them, Eclipse as well as what Web ID. We can install the Eclipse on our own also, on our personal laptop also we can install. I'll share you that recording in one of the batch some 3-4 years back. I've covered that particular Eclipse installation in the live session. So I'll be sharing that recording. You can, if you want, you can install on your personal laptop. Okay, so this is your Eclipse and Web ID. We'll be discussing what both of them. So this is your overall curriculum for our SAP UI5. First 1 or 2 days we'll be discussing this HTML and CSS. Then we'll be spending time on this DOM and JavaScript for 1 week or so. jQuery is also part of our JavaScript. For 1 week or so, we'll be discussing these three. And in the next 1 month or so, we'll be focusing on this UI5 framework and what Fiori configuration. So, 1 second. Yeah. So, if you observe this, initially we'll be discussing about HTML, CSS, DOM, and JavaScript. Again, I repeat, don't expect everything in HTML and CSS. We are not going to discuss in detail, just 1 or 2 sessions, just to understand what is HTML and what is CSS. After that, we'll be focusing on this DOM, JavaScript, jQuery. And when you come to this UI5 framework, yeah. So here we'll be discussing the basics, how to develop your application, both in what Eclipse as well as Web ID. And we are, as I told you initially, as part of this UI5 application, we'll be developing what views. Again, we have different types of views. What are the different types of views? JavaScript views, JSON views, okay, HTML views. We'll be understanding the differences, and then we'll be seeing the data binding and models. So as part of this models, you can see we'll be discussing the JSON file, JSON model, XML, internationalization. Then we'll be seeing how to navigate between the views. And then once we are done up to this part, we will be in a position to develop an app. Okay, so we'll be developing the app. So when I say app here, we'll be seeing in live. Whatever the app we develop in our live session, we'll deploy it on the cloud so that we can access from our mobile phones also. So we'll be developing an app in live from the scratch, and we'll access that particular app on our smartphones also. So we'll be discussing that in live. So developing app, developing the split type application like that. Many what topics here. Once the app development is done, we'll be seeing the integration. Yeah, this is important point. So for integration, we require what OData service. So I will not wait for OData service to finish. What I'll do initially is, once we are done up to this part, that is app development, we'll be taking some open data services. There are some open data services available in the market. Okay, I can directly consume that particular open data service, and I can what access it in my UI5 application. So we'll be discussing that particular integration. Once we complete this UI5 backend part, we will be seeing how to consume our own data services. But before going to backend itself, I'll take one OData service which is developed by some third-party companies, and we'll be consuming that particular OData service in our application, both in Eclipse environment as well as what Web ID environment. So we'll be discussing the Web ID also. And then once we are done with the complete UI5 development process, related to Fiori, the most important thing is what are the types of Fiori applications, and there are thousands of Fiori applications which are given by SAP itself, which are given by SAP itself. So there are three things here. One is we can directly use a standard Fiori application given by SAP, or we can enhance a free application given by SAP. Just like if you take our normal SAP transactions, we'll be doing the enhancements by using this customer exits, baddies, enhancement framework, switch framework. We'll be doing the enhancement. So sometimes you will have a requirement to enhance a standard free application. So we'll be seeing that also in and then we'll be seeing how to develop our own free applications, how to configure it in the launchpad, all those things. Okay, so once front end is completed, we require what backend. So to get into this backend, ABAP is mandatory, object oriented is mandatory. But when you are discussing this front end, we don't require any SAP knowledge. And how to learn this front end? One second. One second, please. So when we get into this ui5 framework, we'll be referring to the demo kit. Yeah. SAP ui5.ana.ondemand.com. This is mandatory for every ui5 front-end developer. Without referring to this particular ui5 development kit, we cannot develop any ui5 applications. Okay, it's a vast subject. Okay, it's not possible to discuss each and every library, each and every control. But in order to develop any ui5 application, it is mandatory that I must refer to this particular what documentation. Just like in our SAP environment, we press what F1. If you press F1, you'll get the detailed information about that particular statement or method or whatever it is. Here also, whenever we are developing the UI5 front-end application, we'll be referring to this documentation on a daily basis. Why we have to refer means by looking at this demo kit, we'll understand what library we have to use. In that library, what class you have to use, what interface you have to use, what method, what attribute, because you'll have thousands of classes, thousands of interfaces, thousands of methods, attributes, and events. Okay, so we must refer to this. What is the current version here? 1.64. So when I started this UI5, I started this somewhere in late 2014 or early 2015. At that time, the version was around 1.18. 1.18. Okay, now you can see the version is what 1.64. So here, if you refer to this documentation, they'll also give the previous versions also. What is the difference between the previous versions? What are the new things? What included? Let me open that. Yeah, you can see. So version to version, what are the changes they have incorporated? Everything they have given in detail. Okay, so how to develop your application? What are the standards you have to follow? Everything will be available here. Suppose I want to develop an application which can be executed on the mobile devices. Okay, there is Android or iOS. Okay, so we'll be having some libraries. So I need to search that particular library here. When I type SAP dot here, it is going to open with a library related to that. For then it's opening what SAP.yum. So as part of the SAP.yum library, you'll controls different classes. Just if you take our module pool, when you go to Screen Painter, okay, on the Screen Painter we'll have the toolbox now. There we'll have some limited controls like a text field, a drop down, okay, custom control, box, checkbox, radio buttons. Like this in UI5 application also, we'll be using a different control. So we have a library called as what sap.m. You can see here the main UI5 control library with a responsive control that can be used in touch devices as well as what desktop browsers. Means if you develop any UI5 application using this library, it is compatible with what both what touch devices. When I say touch devices here, it can be smartphone, tablets, whatever it is, as well as what desktop browsers. So each library will contain what many what classes. Suppose I'm having a class called as button. If I open this sap.ui, okay, you can see it is loading that. Button is every control in ui5 is basically a class. You can see it's a class. So already we know what is a class. Class contains what different components. A class can contain attributes, methods, okay, events, all those things. So here also you can see this is a class which is inheriting some other class, and you can see again this follows what object oriented. So object oriented principles, constructors, inheritance, okay, which interface it implements. Okay, I want to know what are the events supported to the button. If you take our module pool, when I click on the button, there is only one event triggered. What is that? PA event. If you take selection screen, the event triggered is what? At selection screen. Here also, in case of UIF also, whenever I click on the button, some events triggered. So when I click on this, you can see there are two events: press event and what? Tap event. And again, you can see we have different methods. Understood? So it is not possible to discuss each and every method or each and every event related to every control, because you'll have thousands of what? Controls, thousands of classes, thousands of interfaces. Okay, I want to know the attributes. I'll click on this. If I click on this, see, there are many attributes. Understood? So you must refer to the documentation to understand the purpose of each and every property, each and every method, event, all those things. Without referring to this documentation, you cannot develop any UIF application. Even if you're having 10 years experience, without referring to the demo kit, we cannot develop any application in the real time also. This is the base. Okay, even if you want to develop a simple ui5 application also, you must refer to this particular demo kit, sapui5.ana.ondemand.com. So we'll be using this documentation for the next 2 months as part of our ui5 application development. You can see some sample examples. Okay, so you can say I want to know something about, if I click on the button, see, they gave what? The button triggers user actions. I want to know the code behind that. So I can click on this right hand side, show this sample in full screen mode. If I click on this, okay, it will show me the entire application. Okay, so one second, let me just click on this. Yeah, you can see this is your what finished application. Okay, I want to know the code behind this. So you can see right hand side, show source code for this sample. If you click on this, yeah, it is going to what? Show me the code. So what is our agenda here? We should know how to use this particular demo kit. We should know from where to copy, how to copy, where to paste. Understood? Any application we develop in real time, we'll be referring to this particular demo kit. We'll have some sample examples. We should understand what is required for our requirement. We need to copy that, paste it in our requirement, and make the necessary changes. So there are some demo free applications given by SAP. So if I click on the demo app, they give some demo application. If I click on the shopping cart, it is loading that. So you can see in the URL, the first file which is getting executed is what? Index.html. Index.html. Okay, so we'll be done the HTML files also. So this is my finished application. So this is called as master detail application. Left hand side I'm having links, right hand side is displaying the content. If I click on this, okay, so you can see if I click on this, right hand side, depending on the what selection I made, the appropriate one is displayed. So we'll be developing this kind of applications. Okay, so here if you observe now, I'm running this in the browser. It is showing me these many what rows. If I run it in the same thing in the tablet, it might show only 3 rows. Okay, if I run it in the smartphone, the width of the smartphone less than what tablet. Okay, it is responsive, means it will automatically show what? 2 items. So depending on the type of device I use, it is auto responsive. Okay, so we'll be developing what? This kind of applications. Everything will be available here. Okay, see what are the examples they gave? They gave what examples based on web id also, but somewhere in the documentation we'll have the application development using eclipse also. So we'll be using both of them, because as per my knowledge, suppose just to give an idea, in one of the client I worked, Volkswagen in Pune, Okay, they have started with what? Eclipse. Okay, now what they are using I don't know, but way back in 2015 when I was a part of the team, they were using what? Eclipse. Okay, so is it clear? So we should know both of them. Our resume should highlight both Eclipse and Web ID. So extending apps, how to develop the standard UEFI application, everything will be available here. Okay, and someone will have a feeling, what about WebDim Pro? Okay, so there are lots of differences between WebDim Pro and what UI5. I can say WebDim Pro is kind of outdated means yes. Okay, but as I told you, still there are many customers who are still using what? The traditional SAP application. But maybe after 2 3 years everyone will get into this UI5, but there are some customers still running their business on what? WebDim Pro. So I cannot exactly say that WebDim Pro is outdated. There the fresh implementations they can go for what? SAP FA, but there are thousands of customers who are still running their application on WebDim Pro. So what is the difference between this UI5 and WebDim Pro means? There are many differences. Like if you take this UI5, it is compatible with what? Any of the device. It can be desktop, laptop, mobile devices. But if you take this WebDim Pro, it support only what? Desktop based web applications. Okay, and if you take this UI5, it has got the ability to customize and extend. We can extend the standard applications also. But whereas WebDim Pro, we have limited extensibility feature. Okay, and one more thing is, in case of WebDim Pro, the entire processing will be on the server side only. But whereas in case of this UI5, since UI5 makes use of JavaScript, we can implement what? Client side validations. That's why the performance UI5 application is much faster than what? WebDim Pro application. Simple reason is, in case of WebDim Pro, the application runs on what? Server side. Majority of the events are executed at what? Server side. But whereas in case of UI5, there are many events, or I can say all the UI5 events, they are what? Client side. They get evaluated at the client side. Then only the request is submitted to what? Server. But whereas in case of WebDim Pro, you will have frequent performance issues because you'll have multiple server round trips. Means everything will be processed on what? Server side only. Okay, and as I told you, UI5 has got full support with what? All the mobile libraries. But whereas WebDim Pro mobile UI libraries are not supported. Like that, there are many differences between UI5 and what? WebDim Pro. So if new customers, if they are going for a SAP based web application, they'll go for what? UI5. But there are many customers who are still running their application on what? WebDim Pro. In near future, they may get upgrade toward this SAP UI5. And UI5 allows us to develop at our own controls. If you take our module pool, can we develop our own controls? No, we cannot develop our own controls. We can use only the controls which are available on the what? The toolbox. But whereas UI5 allows us to develop what? Custom controls based on our own requirements. So we'll be seeing that also, how to develop our own controls. So this is the overall picture of what? UI5 development process. So what we'll be doing is, tomorrow we'll understand why we call it as UI5. What is the significance of this 5? We'll understand tomorrow. And then what I'll do is I'll develop some application both in Eclipse and WebID. A very simple application to display some welcome message, just to show you the look and feel of what? Both Eclipse and what? WebID. So once I'm done with the other what introduction part, I'll be starting with HTML plus CSS. I'll be spending only maximum 2 to 3 hours. That's all. Okay, we will not focus much on that. Then we'll be focusing on what? JavaScript, DOM, and what other parts. So this is the overall plan. And as I told you initially, we'll be sending the daily email, which includes the notes and programs. You can refer to that. You need not take anything during the live session. And whatever we discuss as part of our live sessions, with that knowledge, you can easily project 2 to 3 years experience on UI5 itself. One project on Eclipse, one project on WebID. In case if you're projecting some 2 to 3 years of experience, you can say that as part of that experience, You have used both Eclipse and what? Web ID. If you're projecting only 6 months or if you're projecting as a fresher, just say either Web ID or Eclipse. But if you're projecting any experience, claim both the things, Eclipse as well as what? Web ID. So any kind of questions, please ask. Framework is a collection of libraries. Okay, a library is a collection of what? Classes and interfaces. Akshay, ui5 framework is a collection of what? Libraries. A library is a collection of what? Classes and what? Interfaces. Yes, Sridhar, you have any doubt?
Yeah, Sridhar, so will you be covering any like plugins like Cordova plugins or those things for scanning, camera scanning or barcode scanning or those things?
See, those things, we can discuss the programs, but we cannot see the live simulation. Na? Okay, scanner, all
Okay.
those. We cannot see the live simulation. Yes, we can discuss examples on that, but we cannot simulate it live. That's what we will do is we'll be developing the app with most of the frequently used controls, and we'll try to deploy that app in our mobile devices. So you can access that particular app from your mobile device in live. That part will be seen. But scanning all those things, it may not be possible to show live.
Okay. So will you be also doing some phone gap, test fairy on those things?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Uh, Phone gap, test fairy to deploy those things. Uh,
Yeah, deployment will be seeing how to deploy it in the ABAP repository, how to deploy it in the cloud. Will be seeing the deployment process.
okay. So will you be covering all those third-party applications like phone gap and test fairy
No,
example,
no, no,
etc.
no, 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 Sridhar, no, no,
Okay.
because we don't have that setup. Okay, we don't have that setup. So we'll be seeing,
Oh, okay,
we'll
got
be
it. Okay.
focusing mainly on the development process. Okay, once we develop
Mm-hmm.
as a UI for front-end developer, we should be aware of how to deploy it on the cloud. That part will be seen. But other third-party devices, no, it is not possible to show in live.
Okay. Okay.
Whatever is there in our course curriculum, you can just go through that. Whatever I have written in that course curriculum, everything will be seen practically. Yeah, any other questions, others? Not mandatory, Akshay. Not mandatory. It's not mandatory. Without ANA database also, we can do it. So that's what, as part of our course, what we'll be doing is, we'll be seeing the what crude operations in the normal ECC as well as what ANA database. Both will be covering. Any other questions, others? Kiran? Right. So whatever we discussed today, I'll be sharing through email, and the recording also I'll share. Tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll see what exactly is the evolution of what UI5. Why we call it as what ui5, why not ui6, why not ui3? We'll be discussing that part, and as I told you, we'll be developing a simple what ui5 application, and we'll try to run it, we'll try to develop both in Eclipse as well as web id, just to give a look and feel on that. And after that, we'll be starting with the basic html tags, all those things, and classes will be from Monday to Friday.
Hello.
Yes, Surendra.
Sir, this application we are going to develop with help of ABAP on HANA or native HANA, sir?
It is nowhere related to HANA, first of all. This
Okay.
front-end
So we have to
development,
consume some
front-end
table data we
development,
have.
tell me,
Okay. Anyway,
for
from
develop,
database table only we are fetching, sir.
yeah, that
So
database
whatever
table
the data
that can be HANA
we are
database or it
pushing.
can be non-HANA also.
So mainly we are focusing on ABAP and HANA, or with the help of means in what way we are going to consume the data from server HANA
We
system.
will be developing the OData service. Okay, so this OData
Understood.
service, okay, it is going to
Okay, sir.
interact with this HANA database or it can be non-HANA database, whatever it is. What way in the sense we should know this OData service development. As part of this OData service development, we'll be creating the project entity set. We'll be developing the runtime artifacts. We'll implement the steps. By doing all those things, will be able to perform the crude operations. You
So
understood?
then how
It is
can
nowhere related to HANA.
non-ABAP HANA?
Nowhere related to HANA. Sorry,
So how non-SAP consultant are aware of all these things, sir?
which one? That's what I said. Initially, I
Non-SAP.
think you joined. That's what. Initially, you joined late. For doing this back-end
Okay.
development, we require only what? ABAP consultant, back-end development.
Okay.
But if you take this front-end development, it can be done by what? ABAP. Suppose assume that I joined a project as a core ui5 front-end developer. So if I'm projecting myself as a front-end developer, I need not know how to develop the OData
Okay.
service. Okay, I should know only how to consume that OData service. Means what the ABAP consultant will do is he will develop the OData service. Once a OData service is developed, a URL will be generated. That URL will be given to what? The front-end developer. The front-end developer will make use of that URL and he will consume that particular OData service in their application. But the ui5 front-end developer need not worry about how to develop the OData service. It is purely the job of what? ABAP consultant. Am I clear?
Okay, sir. Got it. Yes.
That's why in projects you'll have two kinds of roles. Sometimes you will have a separate team for what UI5 front-end developer, separate team for what UI5 back-end development. But now what the companies are looking for is they are looking for ABAP consultants who are good in what both front-end and what back-end development. So that's what I said. If you want to be different from others, if you want to increase your scope in UI5 projects, you should project yourself as what both front end developer as well as what
Okay.
back end developer. If I say that I know only ABAP, I know only develop how to develop the OData service, our scope is limited because any ABAP consultant can develop what OData service. Am I clear? But if you want to be different from the other ABAP consultant, you should get into this particular front end development also.
Okay, sir. Okay. Got it, sir.
Yeah. Any other questions, others?
Sir, this is Hari Raj.
Yeah, Rajgopal, tell
Uh,
me.
yeah, we have the SAP, Fury application where I can see, search for create purchase order. I get the screen of ME21N in
Okay.
the browser.
Okay.
So, like our, earlier, the ME21 body through changes. Is there
Mhm.
anything, body through or directly we are touching the original code in the
No,
Fury
no, no,
application?
we'll not do it through Badi because it is what Fury application. You are saying that you are executing that in the browser. So
Yeah.
the enhancement process in Fury will be different in a normal ABAP. Okay, so
Okay.
when it is a plain SAP GUI transaction, if it is a GUI transaction for doing the enhancements, we'll be using this customer exits baddies kind of thing. But when you are what enhancing the Fury applications, the complete enhancement process will be different. Will be different. So that also will be covering enhancing what standard Fury application. It is not through baddies.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Kiran, we can access any table. That's what I said here. See, suppose this is your SAP system. In your SAP system, you'll have the tables KN1, VBAK, VBAP. So what I have to do, assume that in my ui5 application, I have to display the, try to understand, I want to develop a ui5 application. So my requirement is the ui5 application would be something like this. Suppose application where I need to enter the customer number. Okay, this is my ui5 front-end application I'm talking, and this ui5 front-end application, assume that I want to see the sales orders related to this particular customer. What are the customer I entered? Okay, so this sales orders I have to show it in the tabular format in my ui5 application. Like I want to show the sales document number, sales document creation date, and sales document net price. I want to show the sales order data in the tabular format in my ui5 application. So this is your overall requirement. So what a backend developer will do, backend developer will develop what? OData service. So as part of this OData service, what he will do, he will consume the data from that particular tables, VBAK table, VBAP table, all those things. So assume that these are your SAP tables. Okay, these are your SAP tables, VBAK, VBAP, like this SAP tables. I'll be developing the OData service. I, in the sense, the ui5 backend developer. So once an OData service is developed, what happens? A URL will be generated. So what this ui5 backend developer has to do, once the OData service development process finished, he has to prepare the technical specs. In the technical specs, we have to document about our OData service. Means what is the URL of the OData service, what are the entities involved in that, what are the entity sets, okay, what are the properties of that entity, what are the key properties of that entity. All those things you have to prepare in the technical specs. That technical specs will be given to what? The front end developer. By referring to that particular technical specs, he will start consuming that particular OData service. Means the front-end developer need not worry about how to develop the OData service. He should be worry about how to consume that particular OData service. So all the SAP tables I can access through that OData service. This is what you are asking, Kiran. Okay, so it can be standard table or it can be any table, custom table. So we will be seeing these kind of applications in our live scenarios also. Okay, so once my table data is displayed here, I should make this table to be edited. Okay, table to be edited, just like we can make the table control to be editable, we'll be making this table also what? Editable format. Okay, some of the cells will make it. What are the editing I do here? When I click on the update, this updated data should be updated back to what? My SAP system. Again, it is done through what? OData service. So all kind of CRUD operations I can perform in my front end application. Any other doubts? Akshay, I'm getting into S4 HANA also, I mean the functional part, maybe after 6 months. As I told you, I'm a pure technical consultant, but now in one of my freelancing assignment, I was forced to learn S4 HANA functional aspect also. So I'm getting into this. Maybe I'll be comfortable only after 6 months. Okay. Any other questions, others? Okay, so I'll wind off for today. Tomorrow we'll continue, and those are newcomers. Daily we'll be sending the different meeting ID. It's not the same meeting ID. So every day between 6 to 6:10 or 6:15 sometimes, you'll get the meeting ID to your email. Use that for connecting to the live session. Okay, and the classes will be daily 6 to 7. It may get extended till 7:15 or so. So be flexible. and the practical part will be starting from tomorrow onwards.
Sir, this is Rambabu. One last question, sir.
Yeah, no problem. Tell me.
So regarding that integration, I'm more looking for front end, sir. So the integration
Mhm.
part, when it will come and how I can do, because I had some little
Inte-
experience in back
yeah,
end,
to get
but
into
because
integration, yeah.
yeah,
So to get into integration part, we should know how to work with UI5 controls. Okay, we
okay,
should know how to do the data binding. Okay, we should know how to design the views, how to implement the business logic in the controllers, how to navigate from one view to another view. So I can say maybe after 1 month or so, we'll be seeing that integration part.
so first,
So
okay, after UI5 front end, then integration will come, and then
no, no,
the OData
as
service. That's for,
part of UI5 front end only. By the
okay,
time we are done with all the most of the important controls and libraries, once we are
okay,
familiar with those things, I'll take one open data service. Why I'll take open
okay,
data service means, at this stage some of you don't know how to develop the OData service. That's why I'll take one open data service which is already developed by some third party company, and will integrate that open data service in our application.
okay. I understood that, sir. Again, after
Yeah.
completing the back end, again you will do the integration, sir, for
Yes,
the
yes,
customer
yes,
creation. Yeah,
yes,
that's
yes.
so okay.
We'll be
Because there
seeing
you will
again.
get them. Okay.
Yeah, you will get more clear picture. Then only you
Yeah, yeah,
can
that's
say
matter.
that. Yeah, then only you can project yourself as what both front end and what back
Front,
end development.
exactly, sir. That's well. I had some experience on OData in my earlier project, so that's why
Okay,
I'm
okay.
looking for front end. Maybe I need to wait
Yeah.
till that time again, I think. Okay,
Yes.
okay. Okay, okay, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Or else uh, what I can do is, once I'm done with the complete front end part, I'll take one OData service which I developed in my previous batches. I'll try to consume that OData service in the front end part. That also we can do, not an issue.
No, no, but that will give some limited scope of just
Correct, correct,
operations.
correct.
You can
Correct, correct.
that anyway.
Yes.
I can wait
Yeah.
for that 1 month, not an issue. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
first, that part you can do, sir, so that we will get what exactly how it is consuming. One sample one,
Correct.
then we can wait
Correct.
that one. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is it Rambabu Madineni?
Yes, 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 sir.
I think you have done some course earlier. Webdin Pro. I forgot. What
Updating
course
a
you have
lot of
done?
things. I'm working on many things about BW
Acha,
HANA
acha.
and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
Really,
Yeah.
many. I know you well, and
Fine.
you know.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Last batch also you sent me 2 days. That time it was started with backend, so I followed with the
Yeah.
admin thing and
Somewhere in
uh,
November, I think. Yeah. Correct.
November and January, February. The hotel after Pongal it will be started. So
Mhm.
now my
And,
time started getting into front end. So that's why I rushed up.
the problem why it got delayed is everyone is looking for morning slot before
Okay,
8
okay.
o'clock. Okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Morning is very difficult for me. Also, night shift I was in. Again, I wake up at
okay.
5:30 to attend this. Yeah, yeah. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Others, any doubts? Chalo then. So I'll wind off. So whatever we discussed today, I'll mail you by afternoon. Recordings, I'll try to share daily basis, but again, we need to convert that recordings. Each recording conversion sometimes will take 1 hour to 1.5 hour, and I'll be having multiple batches, and I should be in the front of the system to do that conversion. That's why I cannot promise daily, but I'll try to share. Otherwise, thrice a week, I'll try to share the recordings. Okay. But daily emails, I'll try to share that notes and program. So this is the overall plan. Tomorrow onwards, we'll start the development process. Yes, Surendra, regarding OData, what you want?
Sir, in our earlier batch,
Hmm.
in January batch, so we didn't
Hmm.
get that deep create class, sir. Actually, we were going
Sorry,
to
what is that?
share deep create, sir. Deep create.
Deep
One
insert, I
method
think,
is
not
there, right?
deep create. Deep
Yes, sir.
insert.
Yeah. Deep insert. Yeah.
Okay,
That
yeah,
class we
okay.
didn't get.
Do Surendra, do one thing. You drop me a mail. Drop me a mail. So I'll what I'll do
Sure,
is
sure,
I have
sure,
covered
sir.
that in many batches. So I'll just check that recording where it is available. So By this
Okay,
weekend,
sir.
I'll try to share that recording and material also. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Chalo then, so I'll wind off. We'll meet tomorrow with the development process.